Imagine you're an algorithm, right? Like you look at a tiny island nation of barely 500,000 people, and then you look at a massive two-time World Cup champion team that's just loaded with elite world-class athletes. You run the numbers, you predict a total bloodbath, and you put the odds of an upset at, well, essentially zero.
Right, statistically impossible.
Exactly. And then the roof completely flies off. Today, we're looking at the math behind an impossible upset, and really why everything you think you know about chemistry and underdogs might be completely wrong.
I have to say, it is quite the eclectic stack of research you brought us today.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, it feels like we're just jumping across 5 totally different universes.
I know it looks beautifully chaotic. We've got breaking news reports of a massive World Cup soccer upset. Right next to that, we have predictive sports betting odds that got the outcome horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah, way off.
Then there's a highly technical, data-driven guide to the 2026 World Cup stadium climates, an explainer on the FIFA FairPlay trophy, and finally, a strategy manual for co-hosting a podcast.
Yeah, you'd think somebody accidentally stapled 5 completely different research projects together.
You really would, but they aren't disconnected. So, okay, let's unpack this. The mission for today's deep dive is all about uncovering the hidden architecture of successful partnerships and really the science of overcoming insurmountable odds.
Right.
Because as it turns out, whether you're a massive underdog soccer team battling extreme climates, or you're just two friends trying to launch a brand new audio show, success is almost never about, like, spontaneous magic. It's about highly intentional design.
It is. And to really understand that design, we need to set the scene. I want you to picture the date. It's Sunday, June 21, 2026.
Okay.
The backdrop visually shifts from a quiet studio to this vibrant, sun-drenched, absolutely roaring soccer stadium in Miami. Hard Rock Stadium. This is the absolute epicenter of today's biggest story.
And what a story it is. But before we get to the actual result, I want to understand the expectations here. How
Right.
heavily favored was Uruguay going into this match against Cape Verde?
Massively. I mean, according to the betting predictions from Covers.com, Uruguay was favored with a minus 1.5 spread.
Wow.
Yeah. That means the odds makers expected them to win by at least 2 goals. Easily. And you can see why.
Oh, totally.
They have a star-studded lineup. You've got players like Federico Valverde from Real Madrid, and they're managed by the legendary tactician Marcelo Bielsa. So the algorithm basically said Cape Verde had no statistical chance.
Which makes sense if you only look at the historical data, you know? Like, predictive algorithms look at the back of a baseball card. They look at past stats.
Right, the paper trail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they can't measure whether a team's communication system will hold up when the oxygen literally leaves the room. I mean, it's like evaluating a car's engine purely by its horsepower without checking if the radiator can actually survive driving through the desert.
That is a perfect analogy, because the reality on the pitch completely broke the model. According to post-match reports from Football 360, FOX Sports, and CAF Online, Cape Verde, known as the Blue Sharks. By the way, they didn't just survive.
He fought back.
Yes. They fought back to a thrilling 2-2 draw against the 2-time World Cup champions.
Which is insane.
Let's put this into perspective for a second. Cape Verde is the 3rd smallest country by population to ever qualify for a World Cup.
That's wild.
And yet they're currently undefeated in their first 2 matches of this tournament. They're the very first debutante country to do that since Senegal did it back in 2002.
It's mind-blowing. And the way they pulled it off was just pure cinema. Like, in the 21st minute, Cape Verde's midfielder, Kevin Pina, steps up to take a free kick. He is 32 meters out.
Yeah, that's really far.
That is an absurd distance to shoot from in professional soccer. Most players would just cross it into the box. But he unleashes this thunderous strike that completely beats the Uruguayan goalkeeper.
Unbelievable shot.
It's the longest range goal of the 2026 tournament so far, and it's the first direct free kick goal scored by an African nation at the World Cup since 2010.
But of course, a giant like Uruguay doesn't just roll over, right? They responded with the exact kind of ferocity you'd expect from a Bielsa-coached team.
Bet.
Just before halftime, Maxi Rojo scored with his brilliant diving header, and then Agustin Canobio added another one right in stoppage time.
Ouch.
Right. Suddenly, it's 2-1 Uruguay heading into the break. The script seemed to be, correcting itself.
Yeah, restoring order to the universe.
Exactly. But Cape Verde refused to fold. In the 61st minute, the Uruguayan goalkeeper, Fernando Muslera, made a really crucial error outside his box. Cape Verde's substitute, Helio Varela, pounced on it. He showed incredible composure, controlled the ball under immense pressure, and just slotted it home to tie the game at 2-2.
And while all of this high-stakes tactical drama is happening, you have this incredible, deeply human element unfolding at the back of the pitch. Cape Verde's goalkeeper, Vozinha.
Oh, yeah.
This guy is 40 years old. He wasn't even playing professional soccer until he was 25.
Which is practically retirement age in soccer years.
Exactly. And here he is, organizing a defense against some of the best strikers in the world. The internet absolutely lost its mind over him. He went from 20,000 Instagram followers to 15.2 million followers practically overnight.
It really is the ultimate Cinderella story. Just a tiny island nation taking on the giants of South America with pure passion.
Okay, wait. I love a Cinderella story as much as anyone, but I have to push back here a little bit.
Go for it.
We always hear these narratives about heart and passion when an underdog wins, but practically speaking, passion doesn't stop your leg muscles from cramping in the 80th minute against elite Real Madrid athletes.
No, it doesn't.
Right, like heart doesn't stop your lungs from burning. There has to be a physical, tactical reason they didn't just collapse in that second half.
What's fascinating here is that you're entirely right to question that narrative. And to find the real answer, we have to look past the opposing team and look at the environment itself.
Okay.
Cape Verde wasn't just playing against Uruguay, they were playing against the stadium.
The stadium, what do you mean?
This brings us to another source in your stack. The Databetics World Cup 2026 Stadium Guide.
Right.
You see, this 2026 World Cup is unprecedented. It's a 48-team tournament spread across 3 massive countries, the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. And the Databetics Guide uses something called the Environmental Stress Index, or ESI.
Okay, ESI.
It's a metric that combines average temperature, humidity, altitude, climate variability, and travel demands to calculate exactly how physically punishing a stadium is.
So the environment was the great equalizer here.
Exactly. Hard Rock Stadium in Miami ranks #1 as the absolute most extreme environment in the entire tournament. It has an ESI of 9.1.
Wow.
We're talking about an average temperature of 29 degrees Celsius, which is about 84 degrees Fahrenheit, and a suffocating 75% humidity.
Man, just reading those numbers makes me sweat. And the contrast across this tournament is staggering.
Oh, completely.
Because you have Miami's sweltering, sticky heat. But then look at Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. That stadium has an 8.5 ESI, mostly because it sits at a lung-burning altitude of 20,240 meters.
Yeah, the air is literally thinner.
Right. Physiologically, a player's VO2 max just plummets there. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have BC Place in Vancouver, Canada. It has an ESI of just 3.2 with comfortable 16 degrees Celsius temperatures. It's basically a low-stress, perfect playing environment. So playing in Miami, it's like playing chess in a sauna.
It really is. So if you're Cape Verde's coach, Pupista, and you know the physical toll that Miami's climate takes on the human body, you can't just rely on passion. You have to change your entire tactical architecture.
Because if you just tell the guys to drink water and run hard, they're going to fail. I mean, playing high-intensity soccer in 75% humidity, what is actually happening to the body there?
It is brutal. In that kind of humidity, sweat doesn't evaporate efficiently, and evaporation is how the body cools itself down.
Right.
When that mechanism fails, a player's core temperature skyrockets. Their heart has to work overtime just to pump blood to the skin to try and cool down, which means less oxygen is actually getting to the muscles.
Oh, wow. So they're literally starving their muscles of oxygen just to survive the heat.
Exactly. This drastically reduces sprint intensity and recovery speed. You simply cannot run a high-pressing system where you aggressively chase the ball all over the field for 90 minutes in that climate. Your team will physically shut down.
So Cape Verde's performance wasn't just about having a lot of heart. It was extreme structural discipline.
Precisely. In the second half, Cape Verde dropped deep into a really compact defensive block. They drew 6 players across their backline just to protect Vozinha. They let Uruguay have the ball. They deliberately forced the Uruguayan players to do all the running and expend their energy in the heat.
Wow.
That discipline, to stay in formation and not blindly chase the game, that was an energy preservation masterclass.
And honestly, if you're listening to this and you've ever worked on a high-stress team project that went off the rails, you know exactly how hard that is.
Oh, yeah?
When the pressure spikes, human nature is to panic. People abandon their roles. They start stepping on each other's toes, trying to do everything themselves. Cape Verde survived because they did the exact opposite. They trusted the system.
And that leads to a fascinating psychological consequence, actually. Because when a player's core temperature hits those extreme levels in the Miami heat, it's not just the muscles that fail.
What else fails?
The frontal lobe actually starts to struggle. Cognitive load maxes out. and decision-making evaporates, tempers flare, players make rash tackles. And we can actually quantify that cognitive collapse by looking at the data from your next source.
The FIFA FairPlay trophy.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the FairPlay trophy specifically measures how a team handles that exact kind of psychological and physical stress, right?
Exactly. It's an award given to the team with the best disciplinary record throughout the tournament, and it works on a really strict points deduction system. Every team starts with a clean slate, and you lose points when discipline breaks down.
Let's look at the math on this. So a standard yellow card is -1 point.
Right.
An indirect red card, meaning you get a second yellow in the same game, is -3 points. A direct red card is -4. And if a player really loses their mind and manages to get a yellow and then a direct red, that's -5 points.
And it's this real incentive here. The winning country's association receives an official trophy, medals, and a $50,000 prize strictly earmarked for developing youth soccer.
That's a great prize.
It is. It's a tradition dating back to 1970 when Peru won the very first one. But the history of who wins this trophy tells a really revealing tactical story.
Right, because if you look at recent decades, Spain and England are massive historical favorites. I mean, Spain has won it 3 times in the last 5 tournaments, and England are the current holders from the 2022 World Cup.
And there's a specific mechanical reason for that. It's not just that they're uniquely polite players.
Right.
Teams like Spain play a highly structured, possession-based style of soccer tiki-taka. It's all about keeping the ball.
Oh, I see.
Think about the logic. If your team always has the ball, you aren't the ones being forced to make desperate late tackles. You can't commit a defensive foul if you're the one passing. Their tactical system inherently suppresses the number of fouls they commit.
Okay, but looking at the rules for this trophy, I have to point out a massive loophole.
Oh, what's that?
It reminds me of being in a high school classroom. It's like you only get in trouble if the teacher formally writes you up for detention.
Oh, right.
Because according to FIFA's rules, only actions punished by a referee's card actually count against your score. You could technically commit 30 minor fouls during a match. You could argue with the official, exhibit unsportsmanlike behavior, or even have your fans rioting in the stands.
Yeah, literally.
But as long as a referee keeps the cards in their pocket, your team is technically a fair play angel on paper.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're hitting on a crucial truth here. The underlying goal of a team shouldn't just be to avoid getting a red card so we look good on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
True discipline in a high-stakes environment is about structural integrity. It's about knowing your role, staying in your lane, and not letting the heat or the pressure cause you to abandon the overarching system.
Wait a second. Hold on.
What?
2 teammates holding their structural roles while navigating extreme stress, making sure they don't step into each other's zones. That's exactly the same as 2 podcast hosts fighting for the microphone.
There it is.
That completely explains why the podcasting guide is in this stack.
You've got it. The source we have is the podcaster's ultimate guide to co-hosting a podcast by a podcast performance coach. And it perfectly mirrors the structural discipline we just saw on the soccer pitch.
That is so cool.
The central thesis is that most co-hosted shows fail. But they don't fail because the hosts secretly hate each other or, lack chemistry. They fail because nobody designed the dynamic.
Because magic chemistry is a myth. If you don't define your roles, it's just 2 people chasing the ball at the same time.
Exactly.
Let's walk through these rules, starting with rule number 1 from the guide. There must be a bus driver.
Yes. And the bus driver isn't the most important host. They're simply the person who owns the macro structure of the show. They're responsible for the opening hook, the framing, transitioning between topics, and keeping an eye on the clock.
And without a bus driver, what happens to the listener?
The cognitive load for the listener becomes overwhelming. If neither host is steering, the conversation wanders down endless tangents. The host might feel like they're having a fun, energetic chat, but the listener's brain is working overtime trying to figure out where the conversation is going.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. You aren't just designing the podcast for yourselves. You're designing it so the listener can relax and trust the journey.
That makes total sense. You need a captain on the field dictating the tempo. Then we get to rules 2 and 3, which are about defining your perspectives and giving each other airspace.
Right.
The guide points out that fighting to speak on a microphone is just as destructive as soccer players losing their positional discipline and running into each other's zones.
Exactly. Great co-hosts don't sound identical. You need contrast. If you're just echoing what your co-host says, You don't have a dynamic, you have an echo chamber.
Yeah, that gets boring fast.
And managing that airspace requires a system. The guide mentions using invisible, silent communication, like hand signals, making eye contact, or physically leaning back from the microphone to signal, hey, the floor is yours.
It's the audio equivalent of a no-look pass. It sounds effortless to the listener, but it only works because the underlying system was agreed upon beforehand.
Precisely.
But I want to challenge Rule 5 from this guide.
Okay.
The rule says, prep for the podcast, but not together. Wait, shouldn't co-hosts prep together to build that chemistry? If you prep separately, doesn't doing it in isolation risk making the conversation feel totally disjointed once you hit record?
It's a very fair question, but the logic is entirely rooted in human psychology. The coach explains that when co-hosts script everything together in a Google Doc, the conversation inevitably loses its energy.
Because it's already been said.
Right. It starts to sound rehearsed, like you're performing a school play rather than having a real dialogue. By prepping separately, you ensure that the reactions you capture on the microphone are genuine.
So by holding back during the prep, you guarantee that the spark happens while the tape is rolling. You need authentic tension and real curiosity.
Yes.
That's exactly what you're hearing right now in this very deep dive. We studied the same stack of sources, but we brought our own unique reactions to the microphone.
Exactly. The structure, the bus driver, the designated roles, keeps us on the rails.
Yeah.
But the separate preparation allows for these spontaneous aha moments that make the conversation actually worth listening to.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at this wildly diverse stack of sources, the core takeaway for you, the listener, is this. Success is almost never an accident. Whether you're Vozinha, a 40-year-old goalkeeper defending a net against the mighty Uruguay in the sweltering 9.1 ESI heat of Miami, or you're simply sitting down with a friend to record your very first podcast. You can't rely on luck, and you can't rely on raw passion.
No, you can't.
Success requires defining your roles. It requires a deep mechanical understanding of the environment you're operating in. And above all, it requires the rigorous discipline to execute your strategy without stepping on your partner's toes.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to really mull over, expanding on how we measure that potential for success. We rely incredibly heavily on historical data and past rankings to predict outcomes.
Like the algorithm.
Right. The betting algorithms assumed Uruguay would easily crush Cape Verde because Uruguay had the past trophies and the famous manager. But what if our entire definition of an underdog is fundamentally flawed?
Oh, that's interesting.
What if we stopped measuring potential by looking at the past? If we measured a team's internal communication, the clarity of their structural roles, and their proven adaptability to extreme environmental stress, we might realize that Cape Verde was never an underdog at all. They were a perfectly designed system stepping into an environment they understood. So in your own life, your work, your creative projects, are you evaluating your potential based on your past history, or are you evaluating it based on the strength of the systems you've designed today?
That is a brilliant perspective to end on. Thank you so much for sharing such an incredible, diverse stack of sources with us today. It's amazing how much we can learn when we look for the mechanisms driving unexpected connections. Keep exploring, keep questioning the odds, and as always, keep diving deep.